Baghdad, Iraqi forces on Friday captured the border town of Rawah, the last remaining town under Islamic State control, signaling the collapse of the group's self-proclaimed caliphate. Rawah's capture marks the end of Islamic State's era of territorial rule over a so-called caliphate that it proclaimed in 2014 across vast swathes of Iraq and Syria. Iraqi forces liberated Rawah entirely, and raised the Iraqi flag over its buildings, Lieutenant General Abdul Amir Rashid Yarallah said in a statement from the Joint Operations Command. Syria's army has also declared victory against Islamic State, but last week militants re-infiltrated Abu Kamal, near the border from Iraq, and are still fighting there, as well as in some villages and desert areas nearby. All the forces fighting Islamic State in both countries expect a new phase of guerrilla warfare, a tactic the militants have already shown themselves capable of. Prime Minister Haider al-Abadi congratulated Iraq's armed forces and people, saying Rawah was retaken in record time and that Iraq would soon completely defeat Islamic State. "I congratulate our heroic forces and the Iraqi people on the liberation of Rawah. The success of our forces, in record time and with excellent planning, shows their strength. Our armed forces continue to secure the Jazeera and desert area and the Iraqi border. Total victory is near," he said. A map published by the military showed 0 areas under Islamic State control, and a spokesman for the U.S.-led coalition fighting the group in both Iraq and Syria said on Twitter it had crumbled. A video issued by the military showed Iraqi forces sending a message to Rawah's residents via radio which said, "Days has ended for good, and now the age of Iraq begins," referring to the Sunni militant group by an Arabic acronym. Another showed a convoy of military vehicles sporting Iraqi flags and blasting out the national anthem. State television played patriotic songs and aired footage of troops in Rawah. "With the liberation of Rawah we can say all the areas in which Daesh is present have been liberated," a military spokesman said. Iraqi forces will now focus on routing the militants who fled into the desert and exert control over Iraq's borders, the spokesman said. Rawah borders Syria, whose army seized the last substantial town on the border with Iraq, Abu Kamal. Abu Kamal shares a border crossing with Al-Qaim in Iraq. The militants lost control of the border crossing earlier this month, dealing a critical blow to the organization, which had long relied on the route to move its fighters and equipment. The group's leader, Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi, is believed to be hiding in the stretch of desert which runs along the border of both countries. Shrinking caliphate driven this year from its 2 de facto capitals, Iraq's Mosul and Syria's Raqqa, Islamic State was progressively squeezed into an ever-shrinking pocket of desert, straddling the frontier between the 2 countries, by enemies that include most regional states and global powers. In Iraq, Islamic State faced the army and the Shiite paramilitary groups, backed both by the U.S.-led international coalition and by Iran.